TKO Group have just released their earnings and it makes for pretty interesting reading. Let's start off firstly with Saudi Arabia because that was at the forefront of that earnings call. Saudi Arabia have been in the news quite a lot, in particular the Public Investment Fund, which has decided to stop bankrolling Live Golf at the end of the season, and that's brought into question really what it intends to do with the other sporting investments it has made. Now, Live Golf was formed 4 or 5 years ago as a challenger league to the PGA Tour. It signed up big stars, you got Bryce DeChambeau, you got quite a lot of these big names going over there, making the jump, earning a lot of money in the process. Live Golf have spent a ridiculous amount of money to stage events, and it's safe to say that it hasn't generated a return.
I think they've had enough of losing money because they've made an investment of $5 billion into Live over the past 5 years, and they haven't had a return on that investment. So they have to take a cold, hard business decision. They've got to stop thinking with their hearts and think with their heads.
The return. However, what does it mean for the likes of the Formula One races, the tennis tournament, and they've just pledged a commitment to host the FIFA World Cup in 2034. Now, they've invested billions and billions into shaking up the sporting industry, and they have done to a certain extent. Their investments in Newcastle United have proved quite strategic. There's no doubt about it that when they purchased Newcastle United for a sum in the region of $300 million, it's well worth north of $1 billion now, considering they've got into the Champions League places. So there are positives there. But when it comes to things like boxing, they have invested quite a lot and they have become at the forefront of the sport. But despite the noise circulating around the sporting industry, president and CEO of TKO Group, Mark Shapiro, confirmed Saudi's commitment to the sport is unwavering. He confirmed that there will be 8 more TKO events planned across the Middle East for the remainder of 2026. These will span the UFC, WWE, and of course the newest entity that they formed, Zuffa Boxing. Just going into a couple of events, June the 27th is described as quite historic for TKO because it's a double header. They've got the WWE Night of Champions event in Riyadh. They also have a UFC fight night in Baku, which is scheduled for the same day. Now, that fight night in particular in Baku is part of a multi-year renewal that runs up until 2028. The UFC first went into Baku, Azerbaijan, last June. They sold out that arena with more than 14,000 attendees. Now, just a little bit on Baku, it is the economic powerhouse of Azerbaijan. It contributes over 76% of the national GDP. It's largely driven by the oil and gas sector. So it's no surprise there that TKO have decided to partner with the region. They'll have plans in place to work with local officials and governments. Azerbaijan in particular is quite a strong nation when it comes to combat sports, and this aligns perfectly with Azerbaijan athletes that maybe potentially want to be in the UFC. Now, moving on to another UFC event that has shook the world of combat sports, and that is of course the UFC Freedom 250 event that is being put on by Dana White and Donald Trump. TKO themselves have come out and said they are expecting to lose $30 million on this event, which will take place at the White House grounds on June the 14th. The marketing inventory for that event is now sold out. You've got Ram Trunks and Crypto.com. They're signing as co-presenting partners. Crypto.com in particular has revealed that they'll be giving away a collective $1 million bonus to fighters. That is yet to be determined as to how that is being given out, whether it'll just be for the winners or whether they'll all have a part to play. What's also come out in recent days is high rollers, high earners will be able to pay $1.5 million to watch the event. That is being labeled as a partner investment deal. Hundreds of thousands of people will be able to watch the fight in Washington, D.C. with 8 large screens placed near the White House. On the UFC figures themselves, for the first quarter of 2026, they've seen a 12% increase in revenue, which is driven by media rights, production, and an increase in content revenue. Also added $2.8 million in partnerships. And then finally, just touching on Zuffa Boxing, Mark Shapiro described Zuffa's progress as exceeding internal growth projections. It assigned more than 100 fighters and it staged 5 events. Granted, they've all been at the Meta Apex Arena in Las Vegas, which has been quite intimate, quite small in terms of the production value and in terms of everything that they have at their disposal. The way in which it's been marketed and the fights themselves they've been quite good competitive matchups, but in terms of the noise that normally generates a boxing event, it's not as... There's still a lot of work to be done, let's put it that way. They've also signed a multi-year deal with Sky Sports. They're covering the likes of the UK and Ireland. They've got media agreements in place across 15 additional territories. They've just recently announced the signing of Chris Billam-Smith, who will face Ryan Rosicky at Billam-Smith's hometown and a venue I think that he's fought before at the Bournemouth International Centre. I was looking earlier, it has a seating capacity of around 6,500 to 7,000 people, so that marks an increase in the seat capacity available at the Meta Apex. The outfit themselves, they've made a splash in the cruiserweight division. Jack Massey taking on Chef Clark as the co-main event. That fight, Chef Clark, of course, coming off that fight against Vidal Riley on the undercard of Eubank Ben 1. He's not been out since then. Another sort of story that's been in the media is that they are advocating for the Ali Revival Act, which, barring a few formalities, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, is close to being passed, and this allowed them to form the UBOs that they so want to form, that will allow them to, I guess, take more control over the sport and fighters. They've got that coming up, so it's been a breakthrough, I guess, 2026 for Zuffa themselves. As mentioned, they have signed a lot of fighters. They have made moves in terms of the media deals that they've signed. Sky Sports, that's a big coup for the UK audience. Sky Sports, of course, is massive here in the UK. They've had the likes of football, tennis, they've got all the major sports. So for Zuffa to be the boxing arm to it, they've also signed big talent in the UK. You've got Conor Benn. You've got now Chris Billam-Smith, who's a very good cruiserweight. Jack Massey, Chef Clark. So they are making moves, and it has been pretty quick in terms of the moves that they're making in comparison to, the other promoters. It's been when another promoter is, of course, looking to sign a broadcast deal, it does take a long period of time. But it seems that they've managed to cut through that pretty quickly. I mentioned that they had 15 new territories that they're signing with as well. What's also interesting is that Nick Khan has signed on to be a board member, I think, for the WWE. And it's important that they retain the talent of those people, because they are massive people in the business industry, the TV industry. And what's also, I guess, quite good for their size as well is the commitment of Saudi Arabia to keep bankrolling them, and also the size and the speed at which they're able to just cut through boxing, which is, of course, fragmented in its own right. So, yeah, I mean, look, in terms of TKO, they're a massive entity, but taking Zuffa, one of their sort of not main, but upcoming elements, Zuffa are sort of starting to make waves, but I do think they still have a long way to go in terms of how they produce their events, the venues at which they're doing, but they've made a decent start. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they're able to carry forward that momentum in 2026, and if they end with Conor Benn against Ryan Garcia at the end of the year, and that's a big spectacle, and it's on a Zuffa card, then maybe it'll turn a few more heads. But overall, just a big powerhouse machine, and they'll continue to keep going. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.